Arms race is changing. Clarity used to be a pill and now it's a powder. We're gonna be talking about the whole formula change and really how the impact of the product is gonna change, as it's still a mental health nootropic, but it's switching from an overall mental health long-term product to an acute usage nootropic right now. Clarity used to be a pill product that was sold a lot in GNC, and it was one of my favorite products that actually anyone's ever made. Similar to Stabilize previously, it was a wildly unique product that took a category that was already popular, but put a unique spin on it that really fulfilled the needs of consumers. Arms Race Nutrition's whole motto has always been like old school grit with modern science. I may have butchered the exact motto of what it is, but that's what we've always found from them. And sometimes that doesn't always translate to mainstream consumers understanding it. Now, I'm not saying that the product failed or anything, but they've brought it into maybe a little bit more of a recognizable form, being a powder to drink before you do some studying or work. Nootropics are very popular right now, and they've brought some mainstream big ingredients like New Level, but also kept some new novel stuff that we haven't talked as much about, like Subroxy. Today, we're going to go from the top to the bottom. We're going to talk about what this product's going to do for you. We're going to outline what each ingredient is going to be kind of utilized for. So strap in, get your science caps on, and let's talk about Clarity. So right off the top, like I said, New Level is going to be the top ingredient. At 1.6 grams is the clinical dosage for New Level. Now, New Level was popularly studied in actual video games. This was kind of found as a video game supplement. It was studied in Call of Duty as well as FIFA, but it's also been studied in some more focused tests that are not video game related. So for a product like this, which is going to just be general nootropic, it's awesome because you could use it for gaming, but Arms Race Nutrition is not necessarily a gaming supplement company. So it's also going to be helpful for studying for school, class, reading, whatever, maybe getting some work done. Now, this was originally a version of nitrosamine, arginine silicate with added inositol, and this New Level version kind of came out of a study on nitrosamine that found cognitive flexibility to be a viable claim. Now, they made this ingredient and added 100 milligrams of inositol. That 100 milligrams of inositol actually in preclinical data was compared to a few different dosages of added inositol, and that 100 milligrams was actually more beneficial than higher dosages as well. Arginine silicate inositol as a whole drives more blood flow throughout the body. The key thing about New Level was a focus on cerebral blood flow, which does technically occur with nitrosamine, but New Level is specifically studied in that specific area. The added inositol helps out with that. From there, we move into acetyl L-Carnitine. Acetyl L-Carnitine is the nootropic carnitine because it does what carnitine does in terms of boosting mitochondria, but it does it in the brain. Very special because not a lot of compounds cross the blood-brain barrier, not just carnitine compounds, but compounds in general. It specifically does this mitochondrial boosting in the brain, which is really quite unique. Moving from there, we also talk about tyrosine at a full gram. This is going to be a precursor to a lot of things like dopamine and adrenaline, important neurotransmitters that are very helpful for training, but also studying. Kind of, again, we're going to talk a lot about, how this could be used for training, could be used for studying, could be used for reading, could be used for work. Now, tyrosine is really awesome because it helps sustain neurotransmitter production during times of stress. That could be emotional stress or maybe physical stress, like not sleeping. Tyrosine has been studied in sleep-deprived individuals who are doing shift work. It helps a lot in those kinds of cases. We've got Alpha-GPC in here, an awesome choline source. Like I said, this is going to synergize with that acetyl-carnitine because it's going to make acetylcholine. Acetyl from acetyl-carnitine, choline from the choline donor, that's Alpha-GPC, form acetylcholine, which is going to be the learning neurotransmitter, it's also known as. Now, we've got 500 milligrams of Alpha-GPC here. Awesome dosage. Really big fan of this. Moving into mucinoprurients, it's going to be 50% L-Dopa. I like the fact that they didn't go super high standardization because we're starting to see regulatory issues with those super high standardizations. Now, these seeds contain a large amount of levodopa, which is L-Dopa. This is a very big dopamine precursor. Now, if you've read any of the recent big books about dopamine, I was a big fan of Dopamine Nation. Dopamine's been a big talk recently. Now, this is also an acetylcholine esterase inhibitor. So we were talking about acetylcholine previously being the learning neurotransmitter. This helps break down the enzyme that breaks down excess amounts of it, keeping it around a bit longer. From there, we talk about N-Extra, a fun trademarked version of Alpinia galango. We've talked about this every here and there with some fun pre-workouts, but not as much in nootropics. What's really cool about N-Extra is that it works on its own. It is an awesome focus booster. But when used with caffeine, you find an even longer amount of focus. When compared, caffeine and an extra on its own, caffeine about 3 hours are starting to be a caffeine withdrawal where people start to crash off of it. At that 3-hour mark, it was actually worse than regular placebo. So these guys, after using caffeine, eventually were even less focused than if they had never taken caffeine at all. What's cool is the people who used caffeine and an extra had none of that. At 3 hours, they were back at baseline, totally normal. The group that used just an extra on its own actually even had further focus. At that 3-hour mark, they were not at baseline. They were still enhanced alertness and not having any sort of crash. What's cool about this is that a lot of people like caffeine. So I'm not telling you to go completely caffeine free. I do kind of stay away from caffeine sometimes now. I'm a little more strategic when I take it. But if you do want to use it to combat that crash, the lack of alertness after 3 hours, an extra is an awesome option to do that. Now, we also have some other forms of helping out with stress. Bacopa here is going to be an awesome adaptogen that helps out with just that. This is going to be a big mood booster. Bacopa is rich in bacosides, which is going to be a type of saponin that is similar to beta-glucans, which are famous neuroprotective compounds. But a 2001 human study, and that's important because they did do some previous animal studies. I'm going to skip over that and go straight to the human data. Showed that subjects using 300 milligrams, which is exactly what we get here, had significantly faster visual processing, learning, and memory than the placebo group. This is actually coming over from the original capsule, so happy to see this sticking around. This is a very feel-good ingredient, and we love every time we get to use it. Now, getting into Sabroxy here, this was an ingredient that a lot of people were asking us about when we started to post this. I actually may have leaked this formula a little early because they let me, but a lot of people were curious about the Sabroxy extract here. Now, Sabroxy has a lot of different claims: antioxidants, anti-inflammatory, anti-diabetic, anti-obesity, anti-hyperlipidemic, anti-arthritic, antimicrobial, anti-carcinogenic, cell protective, kidney protective, and neuroprotective. But with this Sabroxy extract, we're specifically looking at one thing, being the oroxylin A part of it. Now, this supports memory and neurons. A few preclinical studies have shown neuroprotective properties that are worth noting. In 2006, researchers found that oroxylin A had an awakening effect and significantly improved motor coordination while decreasing drug-induced sleep time. In the conclusion of that study, researchers wrote that oroxylin A didn't produce anxiolysis and instead produces awakening effects. In 2007, another team of researchers working parallels published a study demonstrating that oroxylin A significantly improved cognitive scores in memory-impaired mice. This could be due to acetylcholine increases, which is definitely going to synergize well with the Alpha-GPC inclusion. In 2010, that same research team returned to better understand the mechanisms behind this, and they found neurogenesis in mice, concluding that the present study revealed that oroxylin A stimulates progenitor cell proliferation and newborn cell survival in a dose-dependent and time-dependent manner. In 2013, the 2006 researchers returned to look into additional properties and found that oroxylin A improves ADHD-like behaviors by enhancing dopamine and norepinephrine, adrenaline, neurotransmission. Overall, it's very promising. There's definitely some more human data to come, but with mechanisms through acetylcholine, neurogenesis, dopamine, and norepinephrine support, as well as mitochondrial health. One study I didn't talk about too much that wasn't a human data, but it did show some mitochondrial boosts. We definitely want to hear more about this soon. Now, at the bottom here, we have two different caffeines. We got caffeine anhydrous at 100 milligrams and ZumXR at 50 milligrams. Now, this is the delayed release. It's going to come on later, which I like in a nootropic form here, because I don't want all of it at once. I want it to be spread out over some time if I'm going to be studying, working, reading, whatever. We're going to get about a total of 137.5 milligrams of caffeine from caffeine anhydrous and ZumXR. Because that 50 milligrams of ZumXR is not pure caffeine, you're getting about 137.5 milligrams of caffeine there added to the 100 milligrams of caffeine anhydrous. Now, last year we've got huperzine A. This is again going to be an acetylcholine esterase inhibitor similar to L-Dopa. This is going to make sure that the acetylcholine that we're creating from the Sabroxy, the Alpha-GPC, as well as the acetylcarnitine is staying around longer and we're using it better. Overall, it's an awesome product. Very different, but we come to expect that from Arms Race, using some interesting extracts and different kinds of ingredients to attack a well-known category. As always, guys, I do have to say we got this for free, and we do have a business affiliation with Arms Race Nutrition, but I do enjoy their products a lot. I think they have very different stabs at these kinds of categories. Hopefully this helps you understand the product better and make a better buying decision. Thanks so much for watching, and have a great day.